What you're about to hear never made the Knoxville stations or the Chattanooga papers. It exists in fragments, a redacted incident report from the Cherokee National Forest, 3 voice memos pulled off a cracked phone, and a ranger's handwritten note. No media, family notified, close the area until the first deep freeze. The dates line up with a weekend in late October, when the leaves were orange as rust and the air smelled like rain pressed through old coins. 2 hikers went into the Citico Creek wilderness on the Tennessee side of the Unicoi. Only one came out, and he didn't come out the way he went in. He kept saying the same thing to every deputy, every EMT, every ranger who asked. It wasn't an animal, it was a person, but it wasn't right. This is his account, stitched from the files, the memos, and what he finally recorded when no one would sit with him after dark. I signed the registry at Indian Boundary a little after 9, just a drizzle on the windshield and that wet leaf smell that tells you the day's going to be honest with you. My plan was simple: take double camp up to the old fire road, cut across toward Fodderstack, camp near the second crossing, and be out before Sunday night. I'd done Citico in worse weather. I had layers, a filter, and new boots that hadn't blistered me yet. What I didn't have was Kyle. He bailed at 5 that morning with a text, "Wife's fever. Go without me, send pics to shame me later." I wrote his name and mine in the registry anyway, habit, and tossed the pen back into the weathered box. 2 lines above mine, someone had scrawled, "M. Vines plus dog," with no return time, just a smiley face. The date was yesterday. The first mile was easy. Orange blazes, leaves slouching off rhododendron, squirrels doing their little slot machine routine in the duff. The creek sounded bigger than it was, swollen by the kind of steady rain that makes the rocks sweat. I crossed on a down poplar and didn't slip. Good omen. It took till the second switchback for the quiet to feel off. Not the normal mountain quiet. This was the way a room goes silent when you walk in on something you shouldn't see. No bird chatter, no chipmunks juking across the path. Somewhere uphill, something clicked twice, a hard, percussive sound like a rock tapped on a tree. I told myself it was a woodpecker. The third click came slower, waiting for me, and I laughed out loud just to hear my own voice argue with it. At the first crossing, I found dog prints in the mud, fresh, big, splayed like the pads were soft from being wet too long. A human boot had stepped near them, but not over them. It walked around like the person was careful not to step where the dog had been. I looked for a leash drag and didn't see one. I looked for the dog and saw nothing. At mile 2, I hit the decommissioned spur. Grass-shaven dirt where trucks used to climb, now just a green scar on a gray hill. Someone had built cairns in the roadbed. Not the casual stacks you kick over without guilt, but arranged in rows. 5 little towers, each topped with a shard of brown bottle glass. Everyone faced the same direction, the direction I was going. I don't knock down cairns when I'm alone. I stepped around them and caught the smell. Ammonia, faint, like a cat box left open a day too long. The rain should have washed it, but it hung in the air in a way sweat doesn't. The fire road passes a stand of CCC pines, half choked by laurel, and that's where I found the shirt. It hung from a low branch by a sleeve, blue flannel, shredded at the cuff like someone had chewed through it. The sleeve was damp, but not from rain. It was sticky in the way sap is, tacky and sweet metal. I wiped my hand on the moss and kept moving. The map shows an old home site near the third crossing. Stone footers and a rusted stove if you know where to look. I found the footers, found the stove half swallowed by vine, and found something the maps don't mark, a shelter of sticks leaned against a rock outcrop, the way kids play at forts. Only this one wasn't for kids. The sticks were lashed with braided grasses, tight, and the lattice woven across the front made a pattern too tidy for an accident. A bone, deer, I told myself, hung from the top beam on a loop of vines, polished smooth by hands or weather I couldn't tell. I called out the way you do before stepping onto private land you didn't know you were in. "Hello? Hello?" I stamped my boots and made big noise. The shelter didn't answer. The forest didn't either. Half a mile later, I passed the first snares, 2 loops of braided reed, half buried in mud, set across a faint game trail. The placement was smart, not where a person would look, but where a limb would drag if you weren't careful. I took a picture. I stepped over. I thought about turning back and didn't. It's always one more ridge. It's always just to the next creek. The rain found a rhythm, thin and polite, enough to whisper on the leaves and make you think you were hearing someone pacing just out of sight. I ate at the second crossing. Tuna, tortillas, the kind of meal that makes you sentimental for salt. When I stood to filter water, I saw the rock across the creek had been swept. Not naturally, someone had taken evergreen boughs and whisked the grit away. In the clean oval, centered like a place setting, lay a folded leaf. It was tulip tree, big as a hand, creased down the middle with something black smeared inside. Charcoal if you're generous, old blood if you were me standing there. Above me on the ridge, something laughed once. No joke in it. The single bark of a voice that's not used to talking like that. I didn't run. I'm proud of that. I packed, crossed, and climbed toward Fodderstack with the burn in my thighs I'd trained for. The ridge opened into a little saddle of grass, perfect for a tent, flat enough to sleep, sloped enough to drain. There was an old fire ring. There was a pile of bones inside it, small, delicate, dozens of them, as if someone had burned a basket of birds and picked them clean. The smell coming off the ring was not wood smoke. It was sweet and wrong and so faint you could tell yourself it was nothing if you wanted to sleep. I pitched anyway. Stakes in, rainfly tight, line hung for the wet socks. The world grayed down to the circle the headlamp made. I texted Kyle 1 bar of service and a picture of the bones. Creepy Boy Scouts out here. The message stalled, then sent. He shot back a laughing emoji and "Don't feed the ferals." I typed LOL and deleted it. I typed "There's snare lines" and deleted that. At full dark, the forest finally found its voice. Owls traded insults. Something heavy moved down in the creek and broke a branch that had no business breaking by accident. I told myself bear, boar, deer with a dumb idea. I told myself a lot of things. Around 10, the whistling started. 3 notes, like a kid practicing the first bar of a song he only half remembers. The same 3 over and over, with a pause after each set like it was listening to see if anyone would answer. I held my breath through the 4th set. On the 5th, I heard it again but from behind me now, up the slope where there's no trail. The pause that followed felt like the dark was tipping toward me. I said, like an idiot, "Kyle?" It stopped. The forest swallowed the shape of the sound and waited. Then, from the creek, a voice said, soft as my own and too close to be safe, "Kyle?" I zipped the tent. I went still. Every muscle in my back lit like a switchboard, each one taking a turn to scream while I stayed quiet. I had the usual weapons, knife, bear spray, headlamp. I put the spray in my sleeping bag with me and clicked the lamp to red. The forest exploded, coughing, hacking, the rapid slap of limbs against leaves, as something backpedaled and climbed in the same motion. The spray mist drifted back into the tent and set my eyes on fire. I gagged and laughed because that's the dumb thing your body does when it's busy dying slow on capsaicin. Down in the creek, a rock rolled and splashed and kept splashing, like someone was stomping the water out of it. Up the slope, branches ticked as weight tested their strength. The whistling returned. Farther away now, broken by coughs. 3 notes, pause, 3 more. I didn't sleep. You can't when the woods are counting you. Around 4, the rain stiffened and the whistling faded like a bad station. At first light, I crawled out, shaking, and found the ring empty, the sock gone, the braided line snipped clean where I'd grabbed it. In the mud around the fire pit were handprints. Not bare exactly, wrapped in cloth as if palms had been bound with rags. The fingers were long, the thumbs were wrong. On the back of my tent was written in char 3 symbols I didn't recognize. They looked like arrows pointed uphill. I broke camp in 8 minutes. My hands didn't get the knots right, my eyes didn't either. I left the ring as I'd found it the night before. I left the bones stacked the way they hadn't been last night. I left the shelter where it was and didn't cut the snares. I moved until moving was the only honest thing left, and the forest let me. It wasn't an animal. It was a person. But it wasn't right. Before noon, I saw the first ranger. He was alone, which seems wrong when you think about it now, but then it felt like an answer. His coat was the right green, his patch the right shape. He didn't wave. He whistled 3 notes, badly, like he'd just learned them. Then he smiled without showing teeth and lifted his one hand in a slow, careful hello. To be continued in chapter.
By the time I reached the ranger, I was already shaking from the cold, but the sight of another human face nearly dropped me to my knees. He stood in the middle of the trail, tall, still, the kind of stillness that doesn't belong to the living. His jacket was regulation green, but the badge on it looked wrong, too dark, like it had been drawn on with soot. He smiled when he saw me, not wide, just enough to show he could. "Rough night?" he asked. His voice carried strange in the mist, like he was speaking through cloth. "Yeah," I said. Someone was in my camp." He cocked his head, slow. "In your camp," he repeated. "What did it say to you?" The question froze me. "How'd you know it talked?" He didn't answer. He reached into his coat and took out something small, a length of braided grass, dark and wet. It dangled between his fingers like a trophy. "You saw this, didn't you?" My throat locked up. "Where'd you get that?" He stepped closer. "They make them to count. Every one means they remember you." The wind rose just enough to push the fog against us. His smell hit first, ammonia, thick and sharp. I stumbled back. Hey, stay right there," I said, but he didn't stop. His smile fell open like something practiced. I saw his teeth, not clean, not human, filed, flat in the middle, sharp on the sides. I turned and ran. The forest exploded behind me, branches cracking, the sound of something dragging a stick along the trees as it chased. The whistling came back, those same 3 notes, now layered with laughter, 2, maybe 3 voices mimicking each other, like they were trying to agree on what human should sound like. At the switchback, I glanced back. The fog was denser now, the trail gone soft underfoot. The ranger's hat appeared first, floating above the gray, and below it, a shape on all 4s, moving faster than anything that size should. I didn't stop until the forest opened to an old service road. There was a truck parked at the end, rusted, ancient, half-eaten by the weeds. I crawled inside, slammed the door, and waited. Outside, the whistling stopped. Then, from the dark, a new voice, a perfect match to mine, called out softly, "Hey, Kyle, I found the truck." The rain hadn't stopped. It only learned how to whisper. By the time dawn seeped into the valley, the air was colorless, the world filmed in gray. The trees looked carved out of soot. I'd been in that abandoned ranger truck for maybe 4 hours, but time didn't move right. It stuttered, long silences, then a sound that didn't belong, then nothing again. The smell came back before the light did. Ammonia, copper, wet rot, like something had been stored alive. I tried to steady my breathing, tried to convince myself I was imagining the scrape of branches against metal, but when I leaned forward, I saw it. The rear window, fogged from inside the truck bed. Something back there was breathing. I thought about running, but the woods outside looked wrong, like everything had taken one slow step closer to the road. The fog hung lower, the air felt thick, like sound would sink instead of carry. I forced myself to look through the back window. There was a tarp, dirty green, slick with rain. Beneath it, a rise and fall, slow, deliberate. My brain kept inventing excuses: wind, trapped air, maybe an animal. Then I saw the hand slip out from under the tarp. It was small, pale, slick with mud. The fingers were long, too long, and bound together with braided grass, tied tight at the knuckles. The nails were chipped, bitten flat. When I whispered, "Hello?" the breathing stopped. Then, from inside the cab, the CB radio hissed. I hadn't touched it. The mic lay on the seat beside me, its wire frayed and blackened. But now, through static, a voice, mine, came through, clear and quiet. "You're not supposed to see that yet." My throat closed. I grabbed the door handle, threw it open, and stumbled out into the rain. The forest didn't feel empty anymore. It watched. The trees looked bent forward, their trunks darker, roots coiling above the ground like veins. I backed up until my spine hit the side of the truck. Then, whistling. 3 notes. Pause. 3 more. It came from up the slope, soft at first, then echoed from a second voice across the creek, slightly out of sync, like something practicing the melody. "Hello?" I called. My own voice sounded strange in the mist, dull and flattened, like the air didn't want to carry it. Then, from somewhere ahead, my voice answered back. "Hello." No echo, just mimicry. The hand under the tarp twitched. The sound of bone against metal, a slow, wet drag. I backed away, but something inside the truck bed shifted, heavy and deliberate. Then the tarp slid aside. At first I thought it was a body, pale, thin, soaked through. But then it moved, its back arching up like something remembering how to breathe. The face, if you could call it that, was almost human. Lips torn at the corners, eyes half sunk and reflecting the dull white sky. Its chest rose and fell in small, panicked jerks, like every inhale was a mistake. I stumbled backward. It looked at me. The pupils flexed like pinholes adjusting to light. Then its head tilted, slow and jerky, as if the muscles weren't its own. It smiled. Not wide, wrong. The corners of its mouth dragged too far, the cheeks splitting a little. There were teeth, but not all in the right places. I took 1 step back. It took 1 step forward. "Stay back," I shouted. "I don't—" The thing jerked, almost confused. Then from somewhere behind me, another voice answered, "Stay back." It was my voice again, but closer. Something crashed through the brush to my right. Footsteps, fast, heavier than any deer, faster than a man should move on that slope. I turned, knife out, heart beating louder than the sound. That's when I saw the ranger again. Same man, same hat, but now his jacket hung open, soaked black from the chest down.
The badge was gone. In its place was a patch of skin, pale and smooth, stretched where the cloth should have been. His head twitched once, then twice, like a record skipping. "Trail's closed," he said. The same words, the same inflection he'd used before, but his lips didn't match the sound. Behind him the fog shifted, 2 more shapes, low, long, jointed wrong, like humans who'd forgotten how bones fit together. The whistling started again. 3 notes, overlapping this time, one slightly off-key. "Trail's closed," he repeated. Louder, "Trail's closed, trail's closed, trail's closed." The words layered until they didn't sound like words anymore. Just sound. I ran. Branches tore at my jacket, roots grabbed at my boots. I didn't look back until the trail curved, and when I did, the truck was half hidden in the mist. The ranger still stood there, head turned too far to one side, mouth stretched open as the others crawled out from under the tarp. Their skin was gray with mud. One dragged its legs behind it like it hadn't figured out how knees worked. Another moved on all 4s, fast, low to the ground, snapping its head side to side like it was tasting the air. The last one stood upright and whistled again. Not the same 3 notes. Mine. The tune I used to hum without thinking when I hiked. I tripped on a root and went down hard, cheek to mud. The sound of them moving came fast now, hands slapping the wet ground, a high-pitched click like teeth snapping shut. I rolled over, knife ready. Nothing there, just the fog, pressing in, breathing around me. Then out of the trees to my left, a whisper, "You're going the wrong way." I turned. The ranger's face hovered in the mist, inches from mine. No eyes, just holes. I slashed out. The blade cut nothing but air. He was gone. The forest went quiet, then softly, like a lullaby. 3 notes, but this time they came from my left ear, inside my head. When I finally stumbled onto the fire road, my body shaking and soaked, I saw a figure waiting by the tree line. A woman, wearing a soaked red jacket. She waved both arms frantically, yelling my name. I ran towards her, shouting, "Help! Please, there's something—" She smiled too early, too fast. The corners of her mouth split, and before I could stop, she tilted her head and whistled. 3 notes, perfectly in tune. To be continued.
By the time I saw the red-jacketed woman, I was beyond panic. My legs moved on memory. My lungs burned from the climb. She looked so human at first, mud to her knees, hair plastered to her face, both hands waving like a signal fire. Then she smiled too soon. The kind of smile people wear when they already know how you're going to die. I stopped in the middle of the road. The silence was absolute. No birds, no creek, not even rain. Just her breathing. Or maybe mine. "Hey!" I yelled. "Do you work for the Park Service?" She cocked her head. Slow, deliberate. The motion snapped halfway through like a puppet string pulled too tight. "Do you—" I started, and she whistled. 3 notes. It wasn't the tune itself that froze me. It was the rhythm. The way she hit that pause after the 3rd note. The same exact timing I'd heard outside my tent, by the creek, behind the truck. Every copy I'd heard had been imperfect, but this was perfect, clean, practiced. I stepped back. "Stay where you are!" She repeated it. Whistle, pause, whistle. Her lips didn't move right. They were too wet. The skin around them cracked. Then she took another step toward me, and I realized her boots weren't boots at all. They were bare feet, black with dirt and split across the soles. The toes gripped the ground like roots. I ran. The forest opened into another clearing and my stomach dropped. The clearing wasn't natural. Trees had been cut, not with saws, but torn down and stacked into walls. Inside the circle was what looked like a camp, or what used to be one. 4 tents, half collapsed, a small fire pit filled with ash, and something white. Not stones. Teeth. The smell of ammonia hit so hard it made my eyes water. Somewhere close, something metallic tapped. Once. Twice. Steady. I followed the sound, crouched behind a stump, and saw a ring of people. 8 of them, all barefoot, all moving in a slow, deliberate circle around a fire that wasn't burning, just smoke. Their clothes were shredded in the same way the ranger's jacket had been, fabric fused with skin, as if it had grown into them. At the center of the ring, something knelt. It was the shape of a man, but the body was all wrong, joints too far apart, arms bowed backward like a spider's legs. It was humming softly, a tune that made my stomach crawl. The others joined in, a low, droning harmony that didn't sound human. Then one of them stopped. It lifted its head and sniffed the air. My boot had shifted on a rock. The thing in the center turned its head toward me, the motion sharp enough to pop bones. And then in one voice, 8 mouths speaking together, they said, "Come sit by the fire, Kyle." The sound of my name broke something inside me. I didn't remember giving it. I couldn't move. I couldn't. One of them stepped forward, a woman with hair matted down one side of her face. Her eyes were dark pits. She reached into the ashes of the cold fire and pulled out something, blackened and round. She held it up like an offering. It was a jawbone, and it still had a tongue attached. The humming stopped. Silence again. Then the leader, the one with the backward arms, spoke in a voice that sounded like more than one throat. It said, "Do you see? We keep what they throw away." The others nodded. It tilted its head toward the forest. "You left your voice there." And then it started to whistle. 3 notes, but this time slower, deeper, and each note came from a different mouth in the circle. They moved closer as they did it, perfectly timed, the air vibrating with the rhythm. I bolted for the tree line. Something caught my sleeve. I ripped it free. A hand grabbed my ankle, fingers cold as bone, skin slick like fish. I kicked and kicked until I felt something break. The hand let go, but not before dragging its nails down my boot and into the flesh of my leg. I didn't stop. I ran until the sound of whistling faded behind me. When I finally collapsed, it was near a small creek, a black mirror cutting through the woods. My leg was bleeding badly. I tore my shirt and wrapped it, trying not to think about what might have touched me. The forest had gone still again. Every tree felt like it was watching. The rain started up, soft, cautious, as if afraid to land too hard. I looked down into the creek water and saw my reflection for the first time since last night. It wasn't right. My mouth hung slightly open.
jaw trembling even though I wasn't cold. My eyes looked darker than they should have been. For a second, just one, I saw another face behind mine. A pale shape with a grin too wide, hovering over my shoulder. I whipped around. Nothing. Then a sound behind me on the bank. Metal on stone. I turned my light and saw something lying in the mud. A ranger's badge. The metal was scratched, the number half erased. When I wiped it clean, I saw 3 small arrows carved in the back. I stuffed it in my pocket and kept moving. For hours I followed the creek, thinking it would lead me out. It didn't. It led me back toward the broken trail, the same cairns, the same downed poplar I'd crossed on my first day. And there, nailed into the trunk of that poplar, was something new. A photograph. Wet, curling at the edges, nailed through the center with a rusted nail. It was me. Taken from behind, standing in front of my tent the night before. The angle was perfect. Whoever, or whatever had taken it, had been close. I checked the tree. Behind it, 3 small piles of stones had been stacked neatly. On top of each, a piece of my gear. My knife, my headlamp, my phone, all cleaned, all dry. And under them, drawn in mud, arrows. Always uphill. I pocketed what I could carry and climbed. The fog thickened the higher I went, the light thinning to gray threads. Somewhere above me, a voice sang. Slow, uneven, like it was learning words by ear. Come, sit by the fire, Kyle. Come warm your bones. The voice was mine. When I crested the ridge, the ground opened into a clearing I didn't remember crossing before, and there it was. Another truck. This one newer. Headlights still on. Driver's door wide open. On the seat sat a map, hand drawn, marked with a single X and the same 3 arrows. Someone else had come looking, and from somewhere behind the truck, in the mist, a man's voice called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" I froze. I knew that tone, the panic buried under false calm. It was me, the night before, calling for the ranger. The voice called again, closer now. "Hey, I found the truck!" That's when I realized it wasn't echoing. It was answering. The shapes emerged first, 3 of them, crawling low, dragging something between them. A tarp. Beneath it, something moved. The man's voice shouted again, "Who's there?" One of the figures stood up. It wasn't human anymore. Its spine curved wrong, its head cocked sideways. It reached up and pulled something off its back. A ranger's hat. It placed it carefully on its head, turned toward the sound, and smiled, wide to tear skin. "Trails closed," it said. And then all 3 began to whistle. The sound spread through the trees, dozens of voices now, layered, echoing off the valley walls. Some were high, some were low, all of them in the same pattern. 3 up, pause. 3 down, pause. It was an invitation, a rhythm for breathing, for joining. The ground trembled. The fog drew inward, gathering like breath before a scream. The backward-armed leader stepped from the trees and pointed straight at me. "You've been tallied," it said. And then the world went white. When I came,
The forest looked clean when I woke. Too clean. The air was still, the ground undisturbed, the kind of silence that feels staged, like someone had wiped the world down and set it back just for me. The birds hadn't come back. The wind hadn't either. Every sound I made felt borrowed. The ranger's badge burned in my pocket, heavy as a kept secret. Paid. The word glinted faintly through the grime. The metal felt warm, like it had just been held by someone else. I started walking, not because I thought I'd find a road, but because the forest didn't want me to. The trees had shifted again. I didn't recognize a single trunk. Every trail I followed curved back to the same hollow, the same creek. The water was still black, still moving upstream like it didn't believe gravity. I followed it anyway. Hours, maybe days passed. The light never changed. I lost track of how long I'd been walking until I noticed something strange. The ground was breathing. Not fast, not deep, just a steady, rhythmic lift of earth. I crouched and pressed my palm against the soil. It was warm, soft. Underneath, I felt something pulse. The forest was alive, not figuratively, alive. A low vibration ran through the dirt, humming against my hand. Beneath the surface, something moved. It wasn't animal. It was too organized, too deliberate. A pattern, a rhythm. 3 beats, pause. 3 more. I jerked my hand back, that same whistle pattern, now underground. Then, from somewhere behind me, the forest answered. Dozens of voices whistled back, men, women, children, all layered over each other, rising from the dirt like steam. I stumbled back and my boot struck something hard. The ground split open and I fell backward into it, into a pit lined with roots. They weren't roots. They were fingers. Pale, thin, human fingers threaded together and hardened by time, like bone turned to bark. They reached from the walls, hundreds of them, fused into the earth. Each fingertip was carved with a mark, a small symbol, an arrow pointing upward. The smell of rot and iron filled the pit. My stomach turned. I lifted my light. Below me, maybe 20 feet down, sat a figure, pale, kneeling, motionless. Its head was bowed, its skin dry and tight, its hair the color of dead moss. Around its neck hung a chain, and from it a dozen ranger badges, each one etched with the same word, paid. I should have climbed out right then, but I couldn't look away. The thing's mouth moved, cracking open, dry lips tearing with the effort. When it spoke, its voice wasn't loud, but it didn't have to be. The sound was inside my head. Whistler, you've been tallied. Its head rose slowly, the neck creaking like rope under tension. The face, if you could call it that, was me. Not just similar, exact. My face, gray and shriveled, the eyes sunk deep, but still alive. "Who are you?" I gasped. It smiled, skin splitting down the cheek. "You are." Then the walls moved. The hands, hundreds of them, started to flex, curling in unison. Dirt cascaded from above, the pit shrinking, closing, breathing me in. I scrambled, clawing at the mud, trying to climb. The fingers caught me, around the wrist, the ankle, the throat, pulling me down toward the figure below.
Its mouth opened wider now, unhinged like a snake. Inside wasn't a throat, just darkness, so deep it felt like the bottom of the world. "Let me go!" I screamed. The thing laughed. "You begged the mountain to remember you. It has." I thrashed, kicked, pulled free of one hand to be caught by another. My knife was gone. My light flickered out. Then the voices began again. The whistling all around me. From the dirt, from the trees, from my own lungs. 3 notes. Pause. 3 more. Every sound came in sync, one heartbeat across the whole forest. I realized in that moment, it wasn't mimicking us. We were mimicking it. The thing beneath me raised its hand, my hand, and pressed its palm against my chest. I felt it push through, cold and heavy, like something reaching into a drawer. When it pulled back, my heart wasn't beating anymore. The whistling stopped. It leaned close, lips against my ear, and whispered, "Now you keep the count." Everything went black.